White. Good morning, all. I'm Brett Fairbairn, President and Vice Chancellor at TRU. In the spirit of Quetzalcoatl, I want to thank you for taking the time to pay our respects to those who've died in service to Canada. We're all connected to each other and to all things, and I believe that means we're also connected to those who've come before us as well. This morning I want to take a moment to think about those who were killed on distant battlefields. There are many names chiseled in stone on the Kamloops War Memorial, a large number of whom died in World War I. One of those men was Sidney Winterbottom. He was 21 years old, about the same age as so many students here at TRU, when he left Kamloops in October 1915 to go to battlefields in Europe. Sidney was killed at Passchendaele on November 6, 1917, nearly 106 years ago to this day. Through his time in the military, including the 12 months he spent in the trenches, Sidney wrote almost 90 letters home. They're preserved in the Canadian Letters and Images Project. His letters offer a painful, poignant glimpse into the life of a young man who died in the mud in France, the same as thousands and thousands of others like him. By no means are Sidney's letters all descriptions of horror. In most of his letters he expresses gratitude for small cakes or items of clothing sent by his mother and asks questions about the news from Kamloops. He tells his family about the beautiful things he sees, like wildflowers blooming and giant poplar trees. "I've seen buttercups out here," he tells his mother in April 1917. "Some weeks ago we were in some cellars in a certain bust-up village. Not far from the cellar was a shell hole, white with snowdrops. I pressed a couple of them and sent them home. I don't know if they ever arrived, but I hope so." And Sidney sometimes expressed hope, even optimism, for his future. "Gee, I hope Dad is able to glom onto a little ranch. Wouldn't it be fine? Please tell him I still have a hunch that we'll have that hunting trip this fall. What do you say? Your loving son, Sid." But there are also many parts of his letters describing brutality and violence and the senseless, arbitrary death that he saw. On April 28th, Sid wrote to his father, "I've often heard you say how you longed to be a soldier, old man. Well, all I can tell you is that longing would surely fade away if you could see a battlefield after an advance. Little heaps of blood and bones here and there, a shoulder and head there, a couple of legs somewhere else. Oh, it's a cheerful sight, believe me." Sidney wrote his last letter home on October 30th, 1917. "Write soon and be sure and send me some candy. With heaps of love from Sid," his letter ends. On November 14th, 1917, Lieutenant H. Jeffress wrote to Mr. Alex Winterbottom, "It's with the deepest sorrow I write to you in reference to the death of your son. I was standing within a few feet of him at the time he was killed, the same shell killing his companion and wounding 3 others of his section. His personal effects will be sent to you through the proper channels, but I felt I must write you a personal note of appreciation of his good work." Sidney was buried on the battlefield at Passchendaele. His family tried to learn more about where he was buried, but his grave was never found. This Saturday, Canadians will gather at 11 a.m. in parks and community centres to honour young men and women like Sidney Winterbottom. It's important that we bow our heads and take that moment of silence. But we should also think about current wars being waged and realize that more than 100 years later, the world continues to send young people to face death and hand it to others. We should feel sorrow that humanity still has so few means to solve our problems, other than with mass violence of the most extreme kind. Remembrance Day should make us angry as well. We're still chiseling the names of young people into rock cairns, and that is profoundly sad. Lest we forget. Cook's Judge.